Welcome to the Mindful Evolution Podcast, where I help you honor your authentic power, expand your impact, and step into your next level of heart-led leadership. Together, we will discuss all things life, relationships, business, spirituality, and personal development so you can build your soul-aligned life and be a permission slip for others to do the same. I'm your host, Leah Drew, women's empowerment coach, feminine embodiment guide, and a woman of many talents. Welcome to the community. Now, let's rise together. Welcome back to the Mindful Evolution Podcast. I am your host, Leah Drew, and today I want to dive into a discussion around our edges. And our edges look a little bit different for every single one of us. But our edges are a place where we can find and discover an immense amount of opportunity for growth and for elevating our own personal awareness. And again, every person has edges that look a little bit different. Edges might revolve around personal fitness. Edges might revolve around challenging conversations. Edges might revolve around sexual experiences. There's so many different places where we can find edges for ourselves. And when we allow ourselves to play with these edges, it offers us an opportunity for learning, for new experiences, and for growing. And this past weekend, I personally went on my first backpacking trip in a few years, and it's something that I've really wanted to do for a long time. It's also something that is an edge for me. It's something I don't know a lot about. Being in the woods is something that actually really scares me in certain aspects. It brings me fear to think about the fact that there are wildlife out there that can eat me. And so I didn't go alone. I went with some friends. But it was a really great opportunity for me to really reconnect with particular edges of mine that I have not played with in a while. And there's this balance when it comes to edges where, right, think of it, this edge kind of like a line in the road. And you can play back and forth along the line, but you want to be mindful because if you go too far past that edge, oftentimes it might lead to pain, discomfort, challenge, or fatigue, or ultimately might lead to an experience where you did not bring enough awareness to what you needed, and you may not have navigated in the most efficient way. And then there's the other side of that spectrum, where if you don't play close enough to the line, you don't actually meet that edge and you don't actually learn. You don't actually get the experience, right? So this, for example, in my experience this past weekend, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what this could look like, right? So this edge could be me going backpacking. And before I went backpacking, I knew that my body already wasn't in the best place. I could feel myself very fatigued. My muscles were already yelling at me a little bit. And so I wanted to make sure that I did not overdo, right? So walk over that edge too much in a sense that I maybe found myself in pain or was not recovering well enough, right? I've had experiences in the past, not necessarily with backpacking, but where I've overexerted myself and I may have possibly fainted or just found myself in some pretty extreme pain. And I wanted to make sure that didn't happen. So I set myself up to go to the store beforehand and make sure that I had plenty of electrolytes on hand so that I could continue to fuel my body and to make sure that my body was supported in the ways that it needed. So I didn't find myself overexerted. I didn't find myself in excessive amount of pain or discomfort. And so I ensured that I didn't go too far over that edge. I knew it was going to be challenging, but I wanted to make sure I didn't go too far over that edge, right? Where maybe regret would have come up, or, I should have done this, or I should have done that. I wanted to make sure that didn't happen. And on the other side of the spectrum, there's not going close enough to that edge. So that might look like choosing to go backpacking, but turning around halfway, or choosing a route that may not necessarily challenged me enough to the point where I got to the top and I was like, holy crap, that was hard, and I'm here and I did it and I feel accomplished. And so we all have these edges, and being mindful of keeping that balance when you're approaching that edge is really important, because you don't want to overdo it, you don't want to underdo it, right? And if you can find that sweet spot of being with that edge and encouraging yourself just enough and pushing yourself just enough so that you get to play with it and you get to experience something new and something challenging, if you can do that and also make sure that you're not acting through fear or being too hesitant and not approaching that edge and not getting close enough, that's really where that juice gets to be experienced. You get to pull that juice out of the experience and use it to support you in growing. Because when you can get close enough to that edge and recognize, oh, wow, I can do this, it's empowering. And if you don't get close enough to that edge, you don't get that same sense of accomplishment, and you don't actually teach yourself and learn that you can push that edge forward and forward and forward. And when I'm working with my clients, especially one-on-one, one of the things that we do together is we take a look at where are these edges for them. And we support them with tools, with courage, with feelings of empowerment that bring them a sense that they can toggle that edge. They can push that edge. Because when you push that edge, you ultimately raise the ceiling. And if you don't continue to push those edges, you don't continue to raise the ceiling. And therefore, you don't recognize that there's more that you can experience. You don't recognize that there are more opportunities. You don't recognize that there are other options. And it brings a sense of strength when you can push those edges. It brings a sense of strength when you can raise that ceiling. Accomplishment, so many things. But if you don't come close enough to that edge, you don't have that opportunity to recognize that you can do more, that you can experience more, and that you can challenge yourself to an entirely new extent. So I encourage you to think about, where are these edges in your life? What's something that feels uncomfortable to you, that might feel a little bit scary, that doesn't feel totally impossible, but it's easy to be in that place where you're like, maybe later, or like, maybe not today, right? Those edges are areas where extreme growth exists for you. Again, those areas that you might be hesitant to step deeper into, those areas are where extreme growth exists for you. So, thinking about where these edges might be for you in your life. Again, it might be a challenging conversation. It might be something around your health and your fitness. It might be something in the environment. It might be learning to hunt. It might be a sexual encounter. There's so many different ways that we can find edges in our world, in our lives, in our experience. So where are these edges for you? Where can you take a step back and take that observer role for a minute and ask yourself, what is it that I fear that's leading me to not explore this edge? And also ask yourself, if I explore this edge, what might it bring me? What might I gain? What new experience might add to who I am as a person? Right? So when you can look at both sides of that spectrum and recognize what are the things that you fear, and oftentimes be able in that to recognize, well, that's a little bit silly. And recognize that if you don't step into those fears, you lose out on particular experiences, growth edges, learning opportunities. And if you lean into it, if you lean into that fear, if you lean into that edge, if you lean into that experience, what will you gain? How will it add value to your being? How will it help you grow? How might it change your view, your value, your thought process? How might it change the way you think? Maybe about yourself or the world around you. So these edges aren't necessarily something to fear. We often innately fear them because they're new and they're unknown territory. But when we continue to act on that fear, we actually prevent ourselves from pushing that edge, from pushing that wall forwards, from raising that ceiling above us. And then all of a sudden you have all this more space to do all these things that maybe you didn't know you could do. And in doing them, you might find you really absolutely love them. For me, backpacking is an edge. For me, camping alone is a massive edge. And I continue to push myself into these experiences to learn more about myself, to learn more about what is it that I fear, to gain more worldly experience. Learn more about how I act, react, respond, and what my brain does. I think it's kind of a game, taking a step back and observing, like, what is it that your brain's actually doing and actually telling you right now? And is that the truth? And you know that by really tuning in to yourself, to that uppercase knowledge within you and recognizing, like, is this actually the truth? That inner intelligence, like, you always know. And so you always have a choice. You always have a choice in staying exactly where you are or leaning into those edges and pushing yourself just a little bit more forwards. You always have an opportunity to sit back and accept your present state of being, or lean into new things, lean into new experiences. New experiences help you grow. New experiences help you come to new realizations and help you shed layers that maybe aren't serving you anymore. And so when we opt into doing the work, we take a look at these edges. And I encourage my clients and invite them to play with those edges. Because in those edges, we find so much more than we ever expected. So I hope that you take a step back and opt into being the observer and take a look at these edges. See what's there for you. I hope this inspires you to go deeper and to play a little bit more with those edges. Have a great day. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune into this episode. I love connecting with my listeners, so if any part of this episode deeply impacted you, send me a message on Instagram and let me know. And if you are loving this podcast, please help me by leaving a review so that I can share this medicine with more beautiful humans like you.